Good morning. Today I'm going to replace the outer tie rod end on my 2003 Chevy Malibu. What is a tie rod end? It is this piece right here. What does it do? At its most simplest, it connects the steering system to the wheel. So if this thing breaks, or if this thing fails, then your wheel is going to be flopping around like a salmon's tail. Here's the new tie rod end. See that? Here's the old one. See how much play that has? That is not supposed to have that much play. So I'm going to remove that and install a new one. It's a cloudy day today. In fact, it's kind of rainy. So I'm lighting this whole situation with some incandescent bulbs, and I am a klutz, so I'm inevitably going to knock one of them over or break one, so maybe that'll add some fun to this video. Now the first thing we need to do is back off this nut. I've got a 7/8 inch wrench. I just kind of tested different sizes until I got the one, and hey look, it's loose. Why is it loose? I loosened it earlier. Why? Because I know that with all these lights in here and this cramped quarters, there's no way I'm going to be able to get in there and loosen that nut because it's very, very tight in there. So I already loosened it. I cheated. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to snug it back up against the tie rod end. Why? Because this nut adjusts your alignment. If you take the tie rod end out and you don't get it back in just the right place, your wheel is going to be cocked and your tire is going to wear funny, and that's not good for anybody. Now, after you do this job, you really should go get the car aligned. I'm not going to do that because I'm not. But that's what you should do. Absolutely, after you do this job, get your tires, get your wheels aligned after you do any kind of suspension work. So the next thing we're going to do is remove this nut on the bottom. This is called a castellated nut. I'm going to move in a little bit so you can see it. And the reason they call it a castellated nut is because it kind of looks like the top of a castle. Here's the new nut that came with the new tie rod end. You see that? Castellated nut. So, this is held in place by a cotter pin. Let's see if I can get lucky with my wire cutters and pull the cotter pin out cleanly without it cutting off. See, the problem with this kind of suspension work is that you get rust, you get corrosion, you get years of decay in here, and sometimes these things get stubborn, but I guess I got lucky. Now I'm going to find the right size socket to get this thing off of here. Wrong size, right size. This is 17 millimeters. See? There's my fake Massachusetts accent. And now here's the first thing that happens when you do car repair. I lost my ratchet. I've got this big ass Craftsman breaker bar. Honestly, I prefer to use the smallest wrench that I can use to do a job so I don't over torque it. But let's see if we can get that nut off. Which way is it supposed to go? Lefty loosey, righty tighty? Alright, I'm definitely going to knock the camera over doing this. Oh, it came right off. See? Torque. Get yourself a long breaker bar like this, and it's easy to remove, although you do risk, on certain bolts, certain fasteners, you do risk damage if you use too big of a wrench. So, you can see the fascinating process of me whapping this this breaker bar back and forth. It's got a flex head, which is handy. This is more awkward than it should be because I'm trying not to hit the camera. The end of this breaker bar is literally half an inch away from my tripod. Normally you'd be doing this and you'd have plenty of elbow room. So, here's problem number one. And this could be a big problem. So let me see if I can find a 17 millimeter wrench. Okay, it's not the problem I thought it was. See, sometimes what happens with these tie rod ends is they become loose in the knuckle. This is called a knuckle. What is this called? A steering knuckle? Something like that. Spindle. So if the tie rod end is loose, then when you turn the nut, the end spins, and then you've got to figure out how to get that out. But it looks like we got lucky. It still fits in there. So now, how do I get this thing out of here? Well, the tie rod end is tapered, and so it's a press fit into the spindle, into the steering knuckle, so it doesn't just pop out. And what I like to do is take my sledgehammer and just tap a few times, and usually that'll do the trick, but it's not working right now. Well, maybe I'll try tapping it from the bottom. See what you're supposed to do. Looks like one of my lights went out already. What you're supposed to do is use what's called a pickle fork, which I don't have, but this method always works for me, so. So we're gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move the camera a little bit, move the light out of the way a little bit. I can get a better swing at it and see how this goes. So you can see my jack stand under the car. I already jacked up the car on the jack stand. And 1, 2, 3. Wow, that is stubborn as a mule. And my light keeps going out too. I'm going to stand up, stand up, stand up, and be counted. That is the craziest one I've ever seen. Never had one. There. Finally. Now I'm sure there are some purists out there who are gonna think I'm a jackass for not using a pickle fork, which is arguably the right tool. And then there are other people who are going to say, I'd never use a pickle fork. Oh, I'm strong enough, I just pull it out with my bare hands. So, do what you got to do. Now, old tie rod. It's out. Is it out? It's out. So what I'm going to do is remove this. It just unscrews. Can you see? My hand's in the way. Yeah, unscrew that. So what's the theory behind me whacking the spindle like that? The theory is that by whacking the spindle, it just jars the tapered fit of the thing, of the tie rod end loose. So, you got your new tie rod, which looks beautiful, and this thing costs $36. I don't know why. I don't know what there is in here that costs $36. Right here, there's a grease fitting that I already installed. It comes with the part. And you can see some grease coming out of here because I already filled this little plastic cup with grease because honestly, I'm never going to use that grease fitting. I don't even have a grease gun. So, I am carefully tightening this all the way to the nut. And hopefully, that'll get my alignment about where it needs to be. Hopefully. But, let's double check. Is this the same length as the other one? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. If the two parts are the same length, then you're fine. If they're not, you need to get your alignment done. So we'll see. If that tire wears out, then I'll go get an alignment. So, now, you can see the little thread nub sticking out the bottom. So I'm going to do, I'm going to take my new, beautiful, castellated nut, and I'm going to sock that on there. And I'm going to use a smaller ratchet if I can find the right size socket. Uh-oh. So, see here this? This is me rummaging through my tools, trying to find the right size socket to go on my 3/8 ratchet so I don't have to use this big ratchet. But I guess I'll just use the big ratchet. So I'm going to pull the lights back, pull the camera back, so I have plenty of room for the big ratchet. And we're going to sock that on there nice and tight. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm sure there's a torque specification for this, but my torque specification is when it's so tight that I can't tighten it anymore. And you can see that the grease that I put in the cup is bubbling out, which means I'll probably never have to grease this again, which is good because I wasn't going to ever grease it again. So how far down do I go? I don't know. It's been a long time since I did one of these. Okay, now it's tight. Ew, look at the grease coming out. Look. Ew. So that's not the best angle because I'm allowing for this this wrench. So now here's what I'm doing. The tie rod end has a hole in it, which you can't really see. I can't even see it. So let me move the camera a little bit so I can get this thing lined up. I'll reclamp one of my lights to shine some more light on the bottom of the thing. Because what we're trying to do, the reason we have this castellated nut is so that we can put the cotter pin through the thing, but I have to find the hole where the cotter pin goes. And I don't see the hole right now. Because you could, see, I'm laying down now so I can look at it from underneath. See, I'm trying to put the cotter pin in and see if I can locate that hole. And this is the kind of thing that you run into, just like a practical concern. Now here's the problem. There's your hole, but your castellated nut, let me see if I can show you this. The hole is way too low on the thing. Now that nut's probably going to stay in place by itself, but we don't want to take that risk. So there was a washer in the kit. I'm not in love with that washer. Let's see this other one. No, it's pretty much the same deal. Got the hole in about the same spot. Maybe I socked it down too far. I only socked it down until it was tight. So what are we going to do about that? I'm not comfortable putting a washer on there. I guess just put the cotter pin in so that it lines up as well as possible with the castellated nut. And tighten it a little bit more. So now here's your cotter pin, and there we go. It's in the castellated nut. So we're gonna pull back the cotter pin, and that does it. Now, what I will do, because I'm not super comfortable with that, I'll keep my eye on this. I'll make sure I have my tools in the car, and I'll watch this. I'll check it out from time to time. But in my guess, it's probably not going to come loose. These things, they're designed to fit in there real tight. I socked up the nut real tight. So now you see we've got our new tie rod end bolted up, and this tie rod end, unlike my camera, has no play. See? You can't even move that. Look at the old tie rod end. The old tie rod end was just wobbling like crazy. Every time I hit the brakes, the car would shimmy. So now I'm going to tighten this bolt. This is the last thing. And maybe I will get the car aligned at some point. So the only way this thing moves is if you really put torque on it. So tighten your bolt real tight and get the newspaper. Look, it's a Nissan advertisement that I'm going to use to wipe up the grease off of my Chevy. I don't think I'd ever own a Nissan. And that's the end of that. Very quick, very easy job. Now I won't get pulsation when I'm braking. My wheel won't go willy-nilly. My car is safe again, and it cost me 36 bucks. And what did this whole job take? 15, 20 minutes? The timer on the camera is 16, 27, 28. So you could do this in half an hour with basic hand tools. Good luck!